this edition of Southern Newsweek, concerns around privacy are raised as the Ministry of Social Development requests files and information from non-profit groups. We find out what had firefighters flocking to Central Otago recently, and Aviation in Queenstown will celebrate 70 years in the air with some special guests. Kia ora, I'm Holly Buchanan. Concerns are being expressed about the confidentiality of client information having to be given to the Ministry of Social Development. As of July, new government regulations require non-profit organisations to share their information around the people using their services.
At present, clients using non-profit organisations such as Rape Crisis are assured of their anonymity. But from July, these organisations will need to supply the Ministry of Social Development with their client information or run the risk of no longer being funded. Non-profit groups in Dunedin such as Connect South are concerned about the rationale of data collection and the impact this will have on the public.
This client data will be identifying people's names, addresses, family, where they've dealt with in certain agencies over the last probably a period of time. And this is starting to get a little bit sensitive because people are saying, and the organisations are saying, well look, it's actually breaching privacy.
Shanks says MSD has not provided the community sector with the assurance that there are protocols in place for collecting and holding personal information. He says there has been a lack of community consultation around the process.
What the organisations that are particularly working in that particular field of family violence, and I know Rape Crisis is one that's actually stood up and said, look, this is just not really acceptable, is the fact that some clients now are actually turning up at the door saying we want some help. The organisation is indicating that under their contract with MSD they are having to provide personal details, and some of these people are basically leaving the organisation, not even coming in the door.
The Privacy Commission is currently investigating the new requirements, with a report to be released by the end of March. Ministry of Social Development Deputy Chief Executive Murray Edridge said the Ministry has to gather sufficient data from providers about individual clients in order to analyse the effectiveness of the services and to ensure the people who need help are being matched to the right services. Edridge says the Ministry has robust procedures for gathering personal information and has done so safely for a number of years. He says the Ministry has been working with the Privacy Commissioner to ensure clients' privacy rights are protected. Roselle LeBone, The South Today.
A Christian not-for-profit humanitarian organisation has been flying under the radar, travelling through many countries offering aid. They're helping people in emergency situations around the world, but have managed to go unnoticed.
Pairing up with 1,500 agencies and churches, the Mission Aviation Fellowship has helped people in over 30 countries in Africa, Asia Pacific, the Americas and Europe.
Many times organisations will use us in an emergency capacity. For example, in South Sudan last year, when a lot of organisations had to evacuate their staff from out of South Sudan, they didn't say who evacuated them.
Earlier this week, MAF pilot John Neal flew a Cessna 206 trainer into Oamaru Airport to raise awareness for the group's activities.
All of that time has been either training MAF pilots or operating in third world areas and onto unprepared airstrips. So an airstrip as flash as this one here at Oamaru would be a luxury to this aeroplane, because most of them would be barely prepared, some of them might even be just dirt roads.
The group does promote the Christian faith in the places it visits, but doesn't restrict their aid for faith-based reasons. Siobhan Watson, The South Today.
Firefighters from around Central Otago descended on the region to compete in a rural firefighters competition. Spokespeople for the event say rural firefighters have a specialised skill set for tackling fire in rural situations.
The competition, like the weather, was hot. Around 1970, the Omarama and Stewart Island Rural Fire Brigades decided to test their skills against each other. and crews from around the southern regions have been competing ever since. Tapanui and Clyde depot manager Mike Furby says it's a great event to keep crews on their toes.
A lot of them have a lot of skills. You know, they're trained up in all aspects of rural firefighting. It's a hell of a lot different than just the likes of the urban fire brigades. Well, these guys are up in the scrub, and where it's all, you know, safety is the main thing.
Furby says some of those competing will be especially focused as they've just returned from a large fire in Canterbury, while others may have needed more training.
Some of the guys have actually come back from doing a stint up at Christchurch at the fires up there, and one particular team's only had 2 training sessions for this competition event.
He says the main reason for the event is quite simple.
It's to train them up and to keep them, you know, competent with their equipment, and and just a day out of a competition where they can meet other people from different stations.
Fire crews from across the south had all hands to the pump in an effort to be the top rural firefighting team in the area. Daryl Baser, The South Today.
Dunedin children have been going to the dogs. School children have been meeting at Dunedin SPCA to share their books and time with rescue dogs in the Book Buddies project. As Rosella Bone found out, the project is beneficial for animals and kids alike.
It started last August when school pupil Mackenzie Fairmaid Shevloff was looking for a new project. She saw successful Book Buddies programs online and contacted the SPCA about reading to dogs right here in Dunedin. That's how she got to meet rescue dogs like Trevor and Archie. I'm Rosella Bone. I'm here at the SPCA in Dunedin to learn all about the rescue dog reading program.
They're happy, but they're not barking. They just sit down, sort of happy.
Wow, so they actually calm down a bit. And how long do you read? Do they just sit there quietly and listen to you read?
Yeah.
Do you reckon they understand the story?
Nah, maybe.
Every Friday, 10 kids read to cats and dogs for half an hour, and the difference in their behaviour with the regular visits is apparent.
If they've been, mistreated, or they've spent time in an unfortunate environment, then they end up here, and the kids just want to come and read to them so that they can just spend time around humans, listen to their voices, interact with them. Sometimes they get to climb into the cages and just hang out with them and pet them and sit with them and read with them.
Reading to animals helps with their socialisation. Children get to practice their reading, and dogs become more adoptable in the process.
It really started with my daughter, Mackie, who's 7, and at her school they have a program that is based on their strengths. So every week they spend time working on something that they're good at, they excel at. And she really loves reading, so she wanted to find something that she could use her reading with that involved other people or animals.
Fairmaid says the initiative is particularly successful for children who don't have pets at home. She says the SPCA and the animals have been 100% on board with the project, which may expand this year. Rosella Bone, The South Today.
A 1943 Domine biplane, also known as Tui, will star at an upcoming reunion in Queenstown early next month. The reunion of former staff and family members from the original post-war airlines will celebrate the history of aviation in Queenstown. Mina Amso has more.
It's not every day that passengers get to experience travelling in a 1943 de Havilland Domine plane, aka Tui. But they might this April.
The grand old lady of the Queenstown aviation history will return here to the skies in April for a 70-year Pioneer Airline reunion.
Queenstown pilot Hank Sproul was 10 years old when the Domines were first flown in Queenstown Airport. He's now one of the longest serving members of the Queenstown Airport's general aviation community.
I think the reunion's going to be great to get people together, all the old people that flew here in the pioneering days.
The 8-seater aircraft was built in the early 40s and used for scenic, scheduled and charter work from Queenstown Airport.
And there's a saying in aviation, if it looks good, it is good, and they are good. So that is probably the special part of the Domine, you know. It's like it's very sleek, elliptical wings, very streamlined, and probably for its time, way ahead of the design, way ahead of what it was designed for.
Richard Waugh, an aviation historian, remembers his father, Brian Waugh, flying in a Domine in Queenstown.
Flying Domines and Cessnas, and then served on the west coast in South Westland, which was related to the Queenstown airline.
The Queenstown Airport Corporation has helped pay for the 1943 de Havilland aircraft come to Queenstown.
It's really celebrating the history of this airport and its roots as a general aviation airport and aerodrome.
Now fully restored for commercial use, the plane will be available during the reunion for those who fancy a ride. Mina Amso, The South Today.
Coming up on Southern Newsweek, school pupil Alex Clarkson schools Roselle LeBone in the art of table tennis. And if they go, they're taking us with them. Earnest efforts are being made to save the bees. Welcome back. A Dunedin school pupil is one of only 16 international athletes to make it to the Oceania Under-12 table tennis champs in April. Alex Clarkson caught up with reporter Roselle LeBone on what makes his table tennis game tick.
A simple jelly bean could get this young athlete across the line in 2 weeks' time.
Usually I have a jelly bean before a game because that's gets you woken up usually before the game.
Alex Clarkson is heading across the ditch to Tweed Heads, Australia, to compete at the 2017 ITTF Oceania Hopes Week and Challenge. He and coach Ben Duffy practice many hours a day to perfect Alex's game. He says the key to a great match is all in the serve.
Cock your wrist up like this and you go like that and you get heaps and heaps of side spin, so it just curves around kind of like that. Like round the net's my favourite shot to play, whereas instead of going over it, it goes like round it.
I think young people in particular have a tendency to try and finish the rally off a bit soon. So we're just trying to keep the ball in play and put the pressure on the opponent to make the mistakes rather than him, and have good strategy when he plays. So Alex talked earlier about working out what the opponent can and can't do. It's really important.
It's not just the trip Alex has to be prepared for, but he says the game itself will get faster in Australia's hot conditions. While he's attending Bayfield High next year, Alex will be juggling college with training hard to make it into the cadets under 15 New Zealand squad. Roselle LeBone, The South Today.
Ashburton woman Elaine Busby saw paratroopers training 70 years ago in Wellington, and she decided then she wanted to jump out of a perfectly good aeroplane. It's a goal she's finally realised just ahead of her 81st birthday.
On Sunday at the Ashburton airfield, 80-year-old Elaine Busby jumped out of a perfectly good aeroplane. Just before boarding the plane, which takes her to her first ever skydive, the octogenarian explains why she's doing this.
When I was 10 during the war, I always wondered what it was like to be a parachuter. Now I'll be 81 in April. 70 years later, I've got the chance.
It was a tandem jump with instructor Brian Martin, who's a veteran of 3,500 skydives. He gave her a solid grounding while the pair were still on terra firma.
Okay, so when we get to the door here, Elaine, you might as well listen to this too, bro. Me and Wayne are going to be sitting here.
Yep.
You're going to be hanging off the front of us, eh?
Yep.
In the baby blue sky.
Busby and Martin sailed back into view to cheers from friends and family, touching down safely on planet Earth. Elaine Busby says she always wanted to do a bungee jump, but her husband and nephew said no. Maybe she can convince them next year. Daryl Baser, The South Today.
New Zealand's bee population is growing according to a recent nationwide Ministry for Primary Industries survey, and the Southland Bee Society is keen to see the trend continue. Ruby Spink has more.
Bees. Around the world, their numbers are decreasing. Hi, I'm Ruby Spink in Invercargill, which is one of the centres around the country where the honeybee population is growing. The Southland Bee Society's noticed a growing trend of people keeping their own hives, with the club recently growing to over 100 active members. Chairman Murray Christensen says bees are hugely important to the environment.
I speak to people all the time that say there's absolutely no bees on our pastures, there's absolutely no bees on my fruit trees and that sort of thing, and pollination does suffer, and trees don't yield as much fruit as what they would if with bees present. In pastures, over a period of time, I would believe that you would see a decline in clover.
The Ministry for Primary Industries has released survey results showing bee colony losses in New Zealand over last winter were only 9.8%, down from 10.7% for the previous year, and lower than the 12% loss experienced in the Northern Hemisphere. The results also show colony collapse, queen problems and wasps are the top 3 causes of winter colony loss. AgCalm Chief Executive Mark Ross says the survey is critical not only because it informs us on the current bee health, but because it allows us to make better choices to protect our current bee populations. Christensen says if you don't keep bees, you can still act to protect and help colonies.
In the home garden, in the backyard and on the farms, there are chemicals that are less harmful to bees than others, and for the sake of a little bit of education and a little bit of research prior to making a decision as to what, say, pesticides or weed sprays and that sort of thing.
MPI says it surveys the beekeeping community so it can respond to the new diseases and parasites. I'm Ruby Spink for The South Today.
2 boys from Timaru gathered more than 40,000 signatures for a petition to have overseas drivers sit a test before they can drive. The pair travelled to Parliament and spoke to a select committee and believe their visit had some impact.
In the cemetery where their father is buried. It's 3 years since South Canterbury brothers Sean and Cody Roberts launched a petition calling for tourists to sit a test before driving on New Zealand roads.
The petition reached over 42,000 signatures, with many of them telling the grief or near misses of encounters with tourists.
Their father was killed by a tourist driver in November 2012, following which the brothers were motivated to save other families from going through the grief that they know all too well. Their 2 trips to Parliament haven't gained the mandatory test for tourist drivers, but have gained some results.
Although we didn't get the law changed, we did get a lot of other stuff done. We got painted arrows on the road, signs and videos on airplanes.
Sean and Cody know their plea to have all visitors sit a driving test on arrival into New Zealand might not be made law, but they're pleased with what's been achieved so far.
We are happy with what we've done, but we think it is still a work in progress, as there's many more changes that could be done.
Their achievements include more than 160 kilometres of rumble strips and painted arrows on roads in high-risk areas, along with signage and in-flight videos for inbound flights. The brothers say people are still dying as a result of tourists not knowing or observing New Zealand's road rules, and they describe their campaign as a work in progress. Daryl Baser, The South Today.
After the break on Southern Newsweek, registration's open for a program aimed to help people with diabetes and help others avoid developing it. And Greta Yeoman's latest work, a documentary, premieres in Dunedin. Welcome back. With 1 in 4 New Zealanders living with diabetes or pre-diabetes, the YMCA is rolling out a program to help people prevent and manage the disease. And registration's now open for the Invercargill group.
1 in 3 Kiwis are obese, and with that statistic comes a raft of health problems. A partnership of companies and organisations is looking to tackle the diabetes epidemic. Dozens of people came to the YMCA last night to see the launch of Jumpstart.
So Jumpstart is a 10-week program for people with diabetes. We do see a lot of people with pre-diabetes come through, and they believe that they can change some of their diet, their lifestyle, and become more active and really turn that diagnosis around. So it's a support program, it's unique, and we collaborate with other services in the community to make it worthwhile.
One of the groups in collaboration with the YMCA is Pharmacodiabetes. Product manager Sandeep Sharma says there was a need for something like this.
It started initially with a casual conversation between CEO of Pharmaco and CEO of YMCA over a cup of coffee, and where they thought that they need to do something to actually, halt the progression of this diabetes in some way or form, and from there the whole idea of Jumpstart developed.
A quarter of New Zealanders are diabetic or have pre-diabetes. YMCA Jumpstart lead Peter McMillan says the program caters to the group's needs. They can bring in dietitians, health psychologists, podiatrists, and the list goes on.
We are very excited about this program coming to Invercargill because there's such a neat collaboration between the services already. So even within 5 weeks of the program being up and running, we're seeing the locals are really embracing the change. We've got a group of 12 really committed locals who are going to give it a crack.
The program started in Auckland and Hamilton 2 years ago, and so far 600 people around the country have graduated it. I'm Ruby Spink for The South Today.
Some Invercargill dog owners will be able to get their dogs desexed for free. This follows a bill in Parliament that could put restrictions on owners of high-risk dog breeds. And the animal control officers are hoping to see locals making the most of the new offer.
He might not exactly appreciate it, but some of the members of the group, known as Man's Best Friend, will soon be eligible for a little free surgery. Hi, I'm Ruby Spink in Invercargill, outside the City Council, which is about to roll out a program to desex menacing dog breeds.
It's a desexing program that has been initiated by central government, and the idea behind it is to neuter high-risk dogs, so that's anything that's been classified by City Council as menacing or dangerous.
The breeds considered menacing are pit bulls, Brazilian feeler, Japanese torsa, dogo argentino, and perro de presa canario. Individual dogs known for committing attacks are also included. Jones says there are over 100 dogs registered as menacing by the council, and the desexing service will be free for qualifying dogs.
Central government has allocated funding to us to desex all of these dogs free of cost. They're willing to pay for every dog that we've got classified as menacing or classified as high risk. They will pay for the desexing in its entirety. We are providing free registration and free microchipping for these dogs if they're not already done.
Animal Control Officer Nicole Todd says normally desexing costs hundreds of dollars. So she hopes the financial incentive will encourage people to get their dogs fixed, making them less likely to wander the streets.
On average, we probably get a call for a wandering dog once or twice a day. It has died down a lot since we've hired more staff, but 90% of those dogs haven't been desexed.
She says most of the wandering dogs are looking for a mate. The program will be launched next month. I'm Ruby Spink for The South Today.
And finally, a Dunedin-made independent film recently had its premiere screening in the city. Out New Zealand is a documentary piece by journalist and filmmaker Greta Yeoman.
It was illegal.
Otago-made film, Out New Zealand, follows the lives of New Zealanders who identify as being in the homosexual, bisexual, transgender, intersex and queer realm. Filmmaker Greta Yeoman is looking forward to tonight's New Zealand premiere at the AUSA building and is proud of the work.
Yeah, so it's basically about people's stories of coming out and it being, well, last year was 30 years since homosexuality was decriminalised in New Zealand, and also 4 years now since gay marriage was legalised in New Zealand. So it's basically just seeing how people are finding those things and whether or not people feel that actually progress has been made or not.
The documentary piece is just shy of half an hour long, and Yeoman says there was easily enough material to make it longer, as many conversations were lengthy and valuable.
There's just so much more stuff that she said in the film which I couldn't fit in, but the stuff that's in the film is just fantastic. So she's a great view of somebody that's been fighting this stuff for a long time and understands that a changing of a law won't necessarily change how people actually think of things.
A former Canterbury native, Yeoman has been making documentary films for a number of years and is already working on her next project. Out screens at 6 this evening in the Everson Lounge at Clubs and Societies on the Otago University campus in Dunedin. Daryl Baser, The South Today.
And that's it for this edition of Southern Newsweek. Get online and check us out on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, or you can keep up with Southern News via our website, channel39.co.nz. I'm Holly Buchanan. Thanks for watching.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.